Okay, welcome everybody. Here's another edition of A Book and a Beverage. We are with the illustrious David Hopkins. And please, before I forget, because I've never said this before, please like and subscribe. Got that out of the way. Check that off.
Yay, like and subscribe.
And everyone's contacts are in the notes below, so you can always look at if you want to look at David or Ro and I. We're all right there. Lots of ways to contact us. So, David, welcome.
Yeah, it's great to be here now. Ro and I, we've chatted before in previous incarnations of podcasts and other things. But Mike, I think this is the first time you and I have actually chatted face to face.
It is. I'm jealous of the beard.
Oh, thank you. I was on Beard of Darkness earlier this week, so I figured I had to grow it out. It just came really fast, and I couldn't catch up with them though.
Well, I got the hairstyles you, so maybe I had to start growing the beard now.
Yeah. So, yeah, this was, it was. I had to surrender a few years ago when I realized that there was no more hair coming back, so I had to shave the rest off. It was time.
This is the least follically challenge I've felt in a long time. So I appreciate it. I'm the same way as you, though, David. I've told my wife for about a year now. I said, when I start looking in the mirror straight and I start seeing the bald patch, like if I tilt my head a little bit, I can start seeing it here. But if I'm just straight and I start seeing it, show's over. Just going to shave it all and be done.
It wasn't until I saw pictures of myself. I don't know what it was, but when I saw a photo of myself, I was like, oh. I didn't realize, just looking in a mirror, something didn't register. Like looking in a mirror, I was like, I am beautiful. And then I look at a photograph of myself and I'm like, ooh, that needs to go.
It's amazing how much that changes from like the time you're 18 or 20 till
Yeah.
now, right? Because when you're 20, you look at dudes and you go, this guy really get up in the morning, look at himself in the mirror and go, yeah.
He probably does. Yeah.
Like, do you not see this? It's like, no, you do. You do not.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is, I knew this was coming because my uncle was like bald by the time he hit his early 30s, and it was on my mom's side, and they were telling me about it. I was like, yep, it's going to happen. And lo and behold, I am the spitting image of my uncle.
Well, it's not necessarily a bad thing. You're wearing that well.
No, thank you. Well, I tried to get like a Herman Melville type look here, so I could at least fake people into thinking I know what I'm doing.
My wife would say I'm the whale in that scenario. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So other thing that I usually forget in these things is we call it a book and a beverage. So
Yes.
Did you bring a book and a beverage for us?
I absolutely did. I'll start with the beverage first.
Okay.
Look good.
So I got some mead. This is
Nice.
This is Fate of the Gods is the name of the mead, and it is from a meadery in Fort Worth, Texas, not but 20 minutes from where I live, called Bee and Brew, and they've got this one, which is a traditional mead, and then they have another one called, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember it. It's more of a Viking. Oh, it's like Odin something, I don't remember. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, Fate of the Gods is my favorite. And with my book, The Dryad's Crown, there is actually a moment where a father figure is talking to one of the younger characters and explains to them that the mead in this particular region is the best mead in the world. And if you're going to join his war band, you have to take the mead oath. And the mead oath is basically you swearing your belly to mead so that you realize that if you die in battle, you don't get to drink any more mead. So try not to die.
That is a great incentive.
Yes. The mead, it tastes good, doesn't it? Yes, it does. You don't want to die, because if you die, you don't get any more mead. Okay, good to know.
I'm convinced that I'm married today because of 2 bottles of honey mead.
Oh, nice.
That we were introduced over. So,
you know, mead is one of those things where I like sweeter drinks, and you can have mead that's a little bit drier and it's not as sweet and almost is like a wine. But I do like a really sweet mead, like just a strong honey taste. And this one is kind of an in between. It's got a nice sweet taste to it, but yeah, it definitely is a little bit more wine like. And I put it on ice, and I like it just fine. Oh, the other mead was called the Allfather, so definitely leaning into that Viking nature. So the Allfather, and then Fate of the Gods. So that's my drink.
Yeah, we've got lots of craft breweries around here, but we are straight out of meaderies.
I'd be curious because, yeah, I think, I don't know, the meadery process, I would imagine it's hard to scale.
Yeah,
because I mean, I don't know if I've seen like giant vats of mead. It's usually like someone with a bottle just shaking it. Like,
have you ever seen Doug and Bob McKenzie, Strange Brew?
no.
You've never seen? Have you, Mike?
No, of course not.
All right.
No.
So I was born in a small town in northern Vermont, 9 miles from the border of Quebec, right? Like 80 miles out of Montreal. So in the 80s, there was these two. It was Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas. You've probably heard of Rick Moranis, at least. And they had these characters they pulled over from Second City Television called Doug and Bob McKenzie. And they made a movie called Strange Brew. You can find it in the dollar bin at,
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And when you were talking about that just then, Dave, all I could think of was those two guys in that movie in a big beer vat. And it's like, I used to think dying in beer would be great, eh? But Bob's not here, and my pants are wet. This isn't heaven. This sucks, eh? And
That's a good Rick Moranis, by the way.
It's a silly movie, but it's worth watching. It's not the worst thing you will ever see.
Yeah, my oldest daughter is a huge fan of the Canadian comedian conglomerate. We'll call them the Rick Moranis. Trying to remember, it was a CCT television, or I can't remember.
SCTV, Second City
SCT, yeah, huge fan of that. And I'm like, yeah, she's better at her 80s television and stuff than I am. Like, she's way.
That's a parenting win right there, man.
I know she's got it down. So I'm sure she's actually probably seen Strange Brew.
Okay, before we forget, what is your book that you brought, David?
Book. Now, I had a hard time with my book because I was like, do I do this? Do I go there? But eventually I decided on Henry V. So we got King Henry V by Shakespeare. This is the Arden Shakespeare edition, which it took me about a year or so, but I bought all of the copies, like the complete Shakespeare of the Arden version. And what's nice is they're all kind of rainbowed. So when you put it on the shelf, it's got this nice little rainbow effect. But yeah, Henry V. And the reason why I brought this one, first of all, I'm a big nerd when it comes to Shakespeare. But the second novel that I am writing in my fantasy series is called War of the Hounds, and it is loosely based on Henry V. So there we go.
Is this a Dryad's Crown follow-up?
Yes, yeah. So
that is an awesome title, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, War of the Hounds is something that is referenced throughout the Dryad's Crown, and it's not, we don't really see the events of it. We just hear people talking about these legendary battles and this showdown between Cret Bonebreaker and Brenkai, and everyone talks about it. But it's like, okay, book 2, we're actually going to see it. We're going to see what happens and what the history versus the legend of it, I think.
So book 2 is a prequel then?
It is, but I am, just to confuse people, I'm definitely going to hold firm that it's book 1, book 2, book 3. So it's, you read it in publication order, but yes, book 2, the events of book 2 do take place before book 1, just to throw everyone off.
Fair.
Yeah.
Now, if you threw me off bringing out a Shakespeare book, I don't think Mike or I were prepared for anybody coming up with Shakespeare. Archie, maybe Richie Rich, but probably not Shakespeare then.
Well, that was the thing, is I was trying to think, like, what haven't you had before? And I was like, I have a sneaking suspicion no one has broken out Henry V.
But you know what you're doing with that, and I totally get that, because the third book of my first series, I did it as kind of almost an homage to Dante's Inferno.
Nice. Yeah.
Right? Because I've always kind of liked the story, and the structure is pretty, cut and dry. And it was easily the most fun of any book I've written to do because of that. You could always just kind of be thinking, okay, where is this going to go, and what's going to happen. But it's interesting to do it, to kind of take that and put your own spin on that kind of thing.
Oh, and here's the thing is, like, if I was to tell you that I'm going to write a novel that's basically a knockoff of Robin Hobb's Farseer trilogy, you'd go, why are you cheating and stealing from her like that? Right. But if I was to tell you that I was going to do a knockoff of Shakespeare, everyone's like, ooh, you're literary and well read, and
aren't you special?
Wow, look at Shakespeare. Because I think Shakespeare's work is so adaptable, in part because all of Shakespeare's work, with a few rare exceptions, was based off of earlier works. And so there was this idea that people wanted something that was kind of a new take on an old story. This is my version of the Danish story of Hamlet. This is, my take on Romeus and Juliet. And
so do you have a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern?
I need to get one. Yeah. I will say that, yeah. And then some adapt better than others. The wonderful thing about Henry V is this play is pretty much the prototype for all of your Bravehearts and all of your big epic battle stories, where it's you're going to have that great speech by the general that rallies the cowardly hearts and points them to the battle lines, and they're courageous because someone put together the right words, which in some ways, I mean, it's almost laughable, because if there was a general, if I was in battle and there was a general like giving me all these words of encouragement, I still don't think he would convince me. I'd be like, I'm still, no, it's.
The difference is those generals were also wearing armor and carrying swords, and they were there as well.
That's right? True. They were by your side. They weren't just in the back going, good luck, guys.
Have fun storming the castle.
You beat me to it, Ro. You beat me to it.
So, Mike, what do you got?
So I am on Corona. I was just telling you that I have 6 left in my 18 pack. So sometime next year, I will be buying a new pack of beer. Yeah, I know, once a week. And then I actually met David, D.A. Goodwin. There we go. At Hanover Book Festival. And the author next to him told me that he has the absolute best goblins ever written in fantasy.
Best goblins?
Goblins. And he said his demons are phenomenal too, but there's a lot of people who do demons well. But he goes, goblins, there's no one who does it better than David. So now I have to read the book and find out for myself.
That's an interesting selling point, because no one's going to expect that one. They're like, oh, goblins. Okay. Yeah, let's bring it. Let's see what you got.
So goblins and demons, I know nothing else about the book, but apparently they're both superbly well written.
You don't really need to know much else when that's your tagline, right? The best goblins and demons ever. It's like, you have my attention.
Yeah. What more do you need to know?
Right. All right. So that leaves me, right?
Yep.
Well, before David got here, I had a large thing of Pete's coffee with a generous splash of Irish cream in it. But the Irish cream's been sitting a while, and it tastes awful. So I'm drinking water now. And
that is so disappointing.
That really is, even for me, especially for me, actually. And book-wise, and this is going to be really almost self-serving for what we're here for, but David was on Beard of Darkness, a YouTuber, 2 days ago, and I was watching that, and I asked in the comments, do you have an audiobook of Dryad's Crown? And he said, yes, I do. And as a matter of fact, you can get it for $1.99 through the 27th?
On Chirp Books.
Yeah. On Chirp. So
Hey,
there it is. And this is the most interesting thing about it. And I have a long drive I'm taking later this week. 19 hours and 38 minutes left. Holy hell. And, $1.99 for 19 and a half hours of book time.
Nice.
That's splendid. You're going to lose your house on that, David.
I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that there are just enough readers out there that I will not lose my audience too much there. Well, I was going to say though, 30 Stones Saga. If we combined all the books together, about how many pages do you have there?
Word-wise, those 6 books are probably going to be a little over 600,000, 630,000, something like that.
Yeah, then I mean, if you were to do all of those as an audiobook, yeah, you'd be well past me.
But now so the last time David and I actually spoke, it was 2020, 2021. And
yeah, we were in COVID land at that point.
Yeah, every other middle-aged person in America with 50 extra bucks and too much extra time. Yeah. I did a podcast for a while. I think I got like 14 episodes into it. Anyway, and David was very nice to humor me and come on and talk about this project he was doing, which was a series of 10 books, which I thought at the time, oh my God, 10 books. What are you thinking? And those books were The Dryad's Crown, right? You released those over the last couple of years as individual books, yeah?
Yeah, they were ebooks, and the hope is once I had written all the ebooks, and they were short. They were even short for a novella, so somewhere between novelette and novella length. And the idea is once all of the ebooks were out, I would then compile them into a single paperback. Which
did you have to change anything, or did you literally just put one on top of the other and repackage?
I actually, this was my chance to kind of George Lucas my story. So I went through, and there was actually quite a few things that I rewrote and reworked. The story's the same. The story doesn't really change, but there are some scenes that I moved the order around. There are some things that I felt like I kind of rushed through it, and so I sort of wrote it out a little bit more. A few things I cut, but not much. And yeah, one of the big things is when you and I were talking, it was 10 books. One of the books has now become War of the Hounds, which is what I'm working on now, because I was talking with my editor and she was like, this is an interesting story, but it doesn't really fit in with the rest of it. So I was like, okay, so like, why don't we take it out and you can always write it later. And I was like, okay, so we saved that for book 2. So yeah, now everyone's confused. It's like, okay, you got books 1 through 9, and then we have volume 2. And so yeah,
which is really 0.5.
Yeah. I'm not doing the 0.5s. I figure people have suffered enough.
You got a copy of Dryad's Crown right there?
I do. Let me grab it real quick. There we go. I should have had it just right here waiting, but yeah, this is the Dryad's Crown. So
now do me a favor and tilt that thing up on its end.
All right there.
Okay, for you kids out there who are looking at this and don't understand when people say that's a telephone book, this is what they're talking about. It's something that thick.
How many pages?
618.
Oh, well, for fantasy, that's just average.
It's fine. Yeah.
That's a lot of scrolling when you're editing, though.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Well, and that was the thing is I probably finished the book about a year ago, but the editing process took me months because just getting through it again, I was moving at a different pace.
So, David, I got a secret for you for dealing with editors.
Yes.
Just ignore them.
I've done that before.
Ro is my editor.
Story of my life.
Yeah.
Do you get to a point as a writer where you're just like, I have been working on this project now for 3 years. I desperately want to do something else, and I don't care what it is, short of like, romance or something.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten people asking me in interviews and things like that, like, is this your first novel? And I've actually been writing for about 20 years, but I've been working in different genres. And that was the thing, is I worked in comics for a while. I was a journalist for a little bit. I co-wrote a memoir, not my story. It was someone else's story. So I've hopped around a lot, but the thing is about hopping around like that is you kind of lose your audience every time you shift, because it's like, I'm a big superhero comic book fan, and they're like, I like his stuff, but now he's not doing that anymore. Or they're like, wow, I really liked some of the journalism, some of the articles you wrote. Oh, nope, he's no longer doing that. And then even my last novel, Before the Dryad's Crown, was a apocalyptic, zombie. It was like medieval times knights during the apocalypse. And it was a little bit funnier, a little bit more comical. And now I'm like, nope, not doing that anymore. So I came to a moment where I was like, I really have to sort of settle down with someone that I can be in a long-term relationship with, genre-wise.
Yeah.
And I had to go back to, okay, what did I really love as a child? What was the thing that if I could grab any book in a bookstore, what would it be? And it comes back to epic fantasy. So I was like, okay, epic fantasy I can stay with for a while. So my hope is that I can stick with epic fantasy, and that I won't get too bored with it. Ask me again after a few years, and I may be ready to to throw it all in the trash. But my plan is to do 8 books in this series, and we're going to do it kind of like how Ryan Cahill does it, where the first book will be a thick one, and then the second one will be more novella. The third one will be so every other book will be kind of a main book in the series, and the in-between books will be more character-based, a little bit more standalone, but kind of fleshing out the world in new and exciting ways. But yeah, every other book will be one of the main parts of the book. So it'll be 8 books total, probably 4 main books and then 4 novellas.
So I have a question for you, because
Yes.
that's kind of what I'm doing with my series, but I'm stupid. So I wrote book 1, I wrote book 2, then I wrote book 1.5, and now I'm writing book 2.5. Are you calling them halves, or are you just giving them all whole numbers?
I'm giving them all whole numbers.
I probably should have done that, because Amazon does not recognize half books, and so no one knows to buy my 1.5, and I'm writing 2.5 now that no one will know exists. So yeah, I probably need to renumber.
Yeah. Now, what I've done, though, which my wife absolutely is just shaking her head, is so each one of these chapters or parts is like 1 through 9 is it.
Yep.
So there's all 9 books are represented here. The next book, I'm continuing the numbering with 10.
Nice.
So when we get to like book 4, the chapter might begin with 30, or 31 or whatever. And she's like,
Right.
What are you doing? I'm like, well, it's all connected. So,
Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, there's going to be somebody who's sitting there looking at that, not knowing that.
Yeah.
There's another big piece of that out there, or they're going to go, "Oh, look at this freaking guy! He couldn't even edit the freaking chapter number right on this."
I just hope in the future you don't decide that you need a chapter between 24 and 25, and then you have to go with half chapters. I just hope that does not happen to you.
Yes, let's hope so. So yeah, it's that's the plan. But Ro, let me ask you. I mean, I'm very familiar with 30 Stone Saga. Like, was there a point in which you were like, I don't know if I can, like, where you because obviously you finished it, but was there a point when you were kind of wearing down on the genre and just the overall story?
Right now. So no, I mean the follow-on series to that is what I'm working on now called Ranger's Deck, and it was from the beginning 11 books. That's what it was going to be. It's now 5, and if I can get through 3, I this year has just been a total bust for me. So I've got to get number 3 out. But in my head, I'm looking toward the next thing. So I'm going to get book 3 done, and then I'm going to take a little detour under a pen name and do a couple of cozy mysteries.
Oh, fun.
I've really kind of fallen in love with that genre, just watching a lot of it and listening to C.J. Archer, um, her Cleopatra Fox is fantastic stories, but they're just kind of they're a little bit more fun, a little bit lighter. But in the back of my head, also, I'm still going with after Ranger's Deck. I'm going to jump ahead a number of generations, so that world that started in the 30 Stone saga as a place very new to magic will then be a very typical place that we're used to in fantasy, where magic has been around for generations, and it will look totally different. And so I'm kind of excited to get there, but I know there's a whole lot of that's down the road a ways before I do that. So yeah, the answer to your question, yes.
Now, Mike, you said that Rose editing your books. What are you writing?
So I am writing a 7-book series that ends in book 4, which my OCD gets triggered every time I say this, and I'm so bad I trigger myself now. It's about a druid. He's in his early 20s, and like most people in their early 20s, he's stupid. And he creates at least half the problems, if not more. And he's going on his quest to become a full-fledged member of the order. It should be like a yay, I graduated high school sort of moment. And instead, he's going to start a wide-scale war because of his quest, and then everything that ensues after.
He went to juvie instead of college.
Yeah. So it's going to be 7 books, and I am this year. Oh my God!
I'm going to stick up for Grommy for a minute there, man. He's not stupid. He's impetuous.
Yeah. He has some growing up to do, but in this year, God, this book has taken forever. I've just been in a writing slump, and I was talking to some authors, and they're like, "Are you trying to write the entire series from start to finish without breaks?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, it's my series." Like, no, like it'll grind you to dust. Write something else. And so I'm thinking I'm going to write a sci-fi novel. Okay. Just because that's what when I first started writing, I was doing a sci-fi novel that I abandoned because my writing was abysmal. So I thought the story was fine, but my writing was terrible. So now I'm going to go back and hopefully my writing's improved. So after I finish this, I'm going to do a sci-fi, which the story's there. I just have to make it something I'm not embarrassed for people to read. So hopefully I can do that relatively quickly, and then I'll jump back in. And I have my series is set basically in England, like say 300 BC. So the druids are, trying to wrestle the petty kings into not fighting each other, sort of thing. And I want to do another series the same time frame, but in Spain. And I've already researched Spain's mythology, and I have 38 creatures, demigods, gods, you name it. I'm like, I don't know that I can get to all these in a series. I mean, without, going to the zoo and pointing at them all, but I just have so much stuff. I just can't wait to do that. Yeah. So I might take a break from Grommy and then go back to him once I'm feeling a little more energized and have to know what dumb thing he does next.
Well, and I'll say this is one of the things that I love about genre fiction writers is I know a lot of sort of literary writers who they will work on their novel for years and years and years, and it'll be just some thin little thing. And then after they've written it, they've got to take like 10 years off before they write their second novel. And I'm like, man, I know genre fiction writers who they've just got a stack of books and an even larger stack of stories they want to tell.
Oh,
and
that's not the problem, is it?
No,
ideas are not the problem.
Yeah, I currently have 4 series that I wish I could write. I just need to, clone myself a few times. And
now, David, you have something going for you that neither of us have right now. Is you're a full-time writer?
Yes. Yeah.
So are you still doing like other kind of gigs on the side?
Yeah. I'm all over the place.
Okay. So I wanted to bring this up, and this will, for anybody who's never met you before, this will solidify your nerd credentials. You've written a lot for Dungeons and Dragons, yeah?
I have Dungeons and Dragons, and I don't know where their corporate policies are now, but when I was writing for them, they had a very open policy through their gaming license. And there was a website called the DM's Guild. And then from that, there's a group called the Adventurers League, which is sanctioned by D&D. and I was able to write some approved Adventures League Dungeons and Dragons adventures, and I was able to put it on the website. And there were people, it wasn't me, but there were people who were just churning out stuff for the DMs Guild and were able to actually make a pretty good living with putting up like bonus material and extra modules and, spells and things that you would need. And I did about 4 different, 2 adventures, 1 spell book, and then there was another one that was about a faction that if you wanted to be part of it, it had all the information about that. And those did well. I was really happy with it. But I will say this, writing a D&D adventure is absolutely exhausting.
Yeah. Why is that?
It's a different skill set because you are telling a story that is going to have to be filled in by the people playing it. And so what you have to do is you have to create guardrails so it feels like you have unlimited choices. And yet there is a very clear beginning, middle, and end that you're kind of guiding them through, but you don't want to force it. You want it to feel open and filled with choice. And at the same time, you're having to anticipate every way that someone could break the game. So, if they want to go off over here, you've got to be like, okay, what do I do in those situations? And you also have to make sure that any monsters or threats that you create are challenging for players, but not something that's just going to absolutely squish them the moment they start playing it. So you have to know a lot about the game mechanics. And I enjoyed all of that. But at the end of the day, I was not one of those people who could grind out adventure after adventure. It was, I wrote a few, I was happy with them. Would I write any more in the future? It's possible, but yeah, it takes a lot. It definitely sucks up all of your creative energy.
So what kind of other stuff are you working on now then?
Well, I mean, I've got my Patreons going strong. I'm kind of focusing right now on the Dryad's Crown. I mean, the stuff that's really helping out a lot is I've been doing a lot of marketing work, third-party marketing work for other people, and so that's probably the most lucrative thing I do right now. But with the book, the audio book, the ebook, the paperback, and you guys know this better than anyone. Nothing sells a book quite like more books. So you write book 2 to sell book 1. You write book 3 to sell books 2 and 1, and so on and so forth. But yeah, right now, the big thing is the marketing work, the fantasy work. I haven't done as much journalism lately. There was a time where I was doing about 1 or 2 stories a month for local regional magazines, publications, and some of them paid great. Some of them were horrible. There was one magazine that paid $1 a word, and I was like, yeah, yeah,
wow, sign me up for that.
Now they tell you what the word count is, so it's like the story is going to be 500 words, but they always pay $1 a word. If I could have gotten a story from them every month, I would have been happy. But I realized very quickly that just because I made myself more available did not mean they wanted more of me. So yeah, but I mean, that was a magazine that I wrote for quite a bit, and it was good. But yeah, the hustle, it can wear you down a little bit.
Yeah, there comes a point where you just gotta take a breath.
Yeah.
Do you have something, Mike? Because I'm going to go somewhere else here.
Go somewhere else, Ro. We'll follow.
You mentioned Patreon. Now, yes. I don't know who's watching this. Let me take a brief glance at my other page here and see if
the 3 of us are watching.
Oh, they'll come later.
Somebody might watch it later.
Oh, yeah.
So for authors, Patreon is one of those things that you see a lot of people kind of doing it, but you always kind of think, what am I going to offer people? Yeah. So how did you find creating that mix of what works on Patreon?
For me, the question always came down to Kickstarter or Patreon. Which one is the best one? And I think Kickstarter is really great for individual projects. I would not use Kickstarter to fund the fantasy series that I'm working on, because that's a long-term thing, that's going to be years of my life. But if I have a hardcover, and I didn't print, they're all paperback, but if I ever wanted to do like a really nice hardcover, sort of a premium edition, I think Kickstarter is absolutely the way to go, because there are people who go on Kickstarter looking for exclusive hardcovers that have the nice leather bound, sprayed edges, all that stuff. For Patreon, though, it's more this idea of, I like to support artists because I believe in what they're doing, and I want to get a little bit of a look behind the scenes of how the process goes. So anything that's process oriented, songwriters writing a long-term series, anything that is kind of an ongoing thing. And of course, you reach out first to friends and family, and you always make sure in your newsletter at the bottom to remind people of Patreon and what the perks are. The other thing that I think is really tricky about Patreon, and there's a lot of great video content out there that tells you how to do it well, is just making sure that you're not over-committing to the perks. So if you're like, everyone who donates $5, I'm going to have an hour-long face-to-face conversation, like, don't commit to things, because if they take you up on that, like, that could be a lot. And so you really have to
it'll fail.
So
so what can people expect if they go check out your Patreon, which is what's your Patreon account?
I believe it is, I'm trying to remember, I think it's David Hopkins, or patreon.com/David Hopkins. Yeah.
Okay.
So patreon.com/David Hopkins. What I do is a lot of video content, like exclusive videos where I talk about my process. I will read previews of what I'm working on. So I think a while back ago, I did a video where I read a preview of War of the Hounds, kind of the opening scenes, to get people an idea about it. The other thing that was really big was I would post updates, sneak peeks, but I would also send polls to my Patreon supporters to be like, hey, for the cover, I've got 4 artists that I think are pretty good. Which artist do you think should be the cover artist? And so I actually had my Patreon vote on it. And those bastards voted on the most expensive artist on the list. So I was like, come on, guys.
You've got to be careful, man, letting people choose stuff for you by vote, because people will always choose the one you really didn't want.
Which I really did want him, but it was also like, oh gosh, this is a lot. So I had to tell them, I was like, okay, you voted for this guy, which means you have to keep supporting me.
Right.
Because otherwise it's not happening.
So is it working pretty well for you?
I would say for the past 3 years, it's been very good for me. It's been a steady, like a few $100s each month, which, I do not like. I greatly appreciate it. I think what needs to happen, though, with Patreon is there comes a point where you have to give people an off-ramp to say, hey, thank you for supporting me over the years. We've kind of come to a stopping point. If you want to hop off the ride, you can do it. No guilt, no shame. You don't have to feel bad about anything. Thank you. And then allow new people to hop on. Eventually what you want to do is friends and family will exit stage left, and fans will exit or enter from stage right. Like they'll come in. And I think that that's the hope. And so I'm kind of reaching a point where maybe at the end of the year, I might bid adieu. I'll keep doing the Patreon for those who really want it, but I think I am going to offer people, I mean, they can quit at any time, but I have friends who are like, oh my gosh, if I leave Patreon, David's going to be so mad. I'm like, dude, you've been supporting me for years. Like, I appreciate it. If you leave, it's okay. It's cool. I totally get it. But I think some people, they feel a little bit guilty. And so I'm going to be offering that off ramp. and we'll see what happens from there. But I do feel like Patreon works best when it kind of runs in seasons. And that's my own thought. I think that sometimes people have to remind people that, hey, I appreciate it, but this is not a lifetime commitment. This is not a timeshare. You can hop on and hop off, and I'll be fine. So that's the big advice that I would give, is just, and it's worked well for me. But yeah, I think I'm reaching a stage now where the Patreon's going to have to change a little bit. And we'll see if people join me for the next stage. But I do think that the friends and family have been carrying my ass for long enough that it's now time to let new people help out.
Let the Dryads start carrying some of that weight. Now you're down in Texas, right?
I am, yeah.
So do you find a lot of opportunities to go out and go to shows or places where you can interact and meet people and, sell a few books?
It hasn't been as great as I had hoped. I think that we're still recovering from like COVID. We're fine in that regard, but I do think that the convention event industry is still a little bit slow to pick up. We have an event in the area called FenCon, but it's not very well attended. I think the people behind it seem to be very well intentioned, but I would never advise someone to pack up their car, drive across country to try and sell books to pay for their gas money back.
Yeah.
I think that it's great for locals, and I think it's probably great for bigger names, but it might be hard. And then I went to World Fantasy Con, which was just in Kansas City, so that was kind of close, but even that one wasn't great. The best convention, though, that I've been to in Texas was Armadillo Con, which is in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, I think I would recommend to people. It's a great place.
It's got its own kind of vibe, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Austin's a very interesting kind of place.
Yeah. And every year with Armadillo Con, you're probably going to get 2 or 3 bigger names that will draw in people for the smaller folk. I mean, and that's a big thing is like you kind of need a big name to draw in, and we become like I become like the little fish swimming alongside the great white. I pick up the little pieces that get left after, and I feel like Armadillo Con is a good one for that. Armadillo Con also has a great writing workshop that is the day before the event, and I think it is very well run because it's a small workshop. You get like 5 or 6 people per group, and you have 2 more experienced authors who are there reading and critiquing. And so FenCon's great. So a long answer to a short question. I think Texas, for its size, could do better. But the best thing in Texas has to be Armadillo Con.
So I'll tell you, last year I did a lot of Comic-Cons. And I did pretty well, and I was expecting to do better this year. No. I think that with inflation being what it is, the first thing that goes is disposable income, and that's Comic-Con cash.
Yeah.
So this year was kind of took it on the chin a little bit, but
yeah, so, I've been looking at Dragon Con basically because a lot of the indie authors that I really respect, a lot of them were showing up to that last year. And so I'm like, maybe that one would be a good one. But I think the thing that Dragon Con does is it has a comic book track, but it also has a track for fantasy authors, sci-fi authors. Like it has more of a book track as well. I used to work in comics, and I found it very hard to sell comics at a comic book convention because most of them were there for Spider-Man, X-Men, Batman, Superman. So I'm here with my own indie comic, and that's not what they're there for.
Dragon Con, I've never been, but it's pretty difficult to get into, and it is not a cheap table.
That's the problem.
It's a pricey weekend, and it's a long weekend.
Yeah.
What you said about Comic-Cons, it's kind of funny because I think Mike, were you at? Maybe we met there actually up at the one in DC.
Awesome Con? Yeah, that's
Awesome
where we
Con.
met.
Yeah, back in like 2021. It was like one of the first things that opened up after COVID or whatever. And that the site was just enormous, right?
Yeah.
Huge convention center. I think I saw 4 comic book tables. So a lot of these conventions they're not really comic conventions anymore. They're pop culture,
Yeah.
Conventions and a place for people to kind of go and let their flag fly. And but they're not really comics. There's some, obviously, right? There are still people who roll in with a pull cart and just load it up with a couple of big white boxes. But a lot of the stuff there isn't. And I've noticed more and more authors at these things as well, which is also which is great, in the one respect, and it's not great in the respect that now you've just got more and more people to, people are like, oh, your books look good, but there's 8 other people here with books. I'm going to go check them out too.
You're like, no, come back.
Yeah, right.
They're all horrible. Buy mine.
Well, I went to San Diego Comic-Con 4 years in a row, and that was because I have family that lives in Huntington Beach, and I very conveniently scheduled family vacations,
Nice,
like the week before or the week after San Diego. So we would fly in, visit with family, drive down there, do the convention, and we would do it about as cheaply as we could. There was it looked like a YMCA youth hostel where we would get our room at, and we stayed there for a long time. But the thing about San Diego was that was around the time where Hollywood was really beginning to discover it. It was kind of in the early 2000s. And I remember my table being right next to New Line Cinemas, like Lord of the Rings. And so every 20 minutes or every 10 minutes, the Howard Shore score would just swell up. And for about a week straight, I had that music just in my head as I was trying to sell my tiny little comic books.
It could be a lot worse.
It could be. There were a lot of other tables I could have been next to, but
I was at a show in Tennessee a couple years ago. Have you ever seen Maximum Overdrive?
yeah, that was the Stephen King movie.
With the big green goblin truck?
Yeah.
There was a guy there who found that green goblin part from the truck.
Oh, gosh.
And rescued it from a dump and rebuilt it. And he had this giant display, and the thing was, it was like 20 feet away from me. And he had that movie on a loop all weekend.
Oh, jeez.
And it's a horrible, horrible movie. It's just not good.
No.
But eventually, after about the 8th viewing, it's the kind of not good that you can't take your eyes from, right? It's just like that. So I totally understand that kind of thing. Well, you get to a new show and you find out who your neighbors are, and sometimes it works out great, and sometimes it just really makes it a long weekend.
Yeah, well, yeah, because Maximum Overdrive, I remember it was like the green comet that was like around the Earth that was causing the machines to turn on people. The premise itself really strained your whole suspension of disbelief. But if you were willing to go through with it, it was still a goofy
movie. Well, apparently it's the only one Stephen King, I guess, like worked on set. And I saw something from him, and he said, yeah, you just don't want to be high on coke making a movie. So,
well, and that's the thing, is like Stephen King has to be, for his writing, I mean, even his misses are like, he's written so much, he's so prolific that I think his legacy is pretty much locked in. But his movies are the epitome of hit or miss.
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't know what you're getting.
So I got to tell you, Andrew Wizardly from Andrew's Wizardly Reads, I was talking to him, and I told him, I was like, if there's one thing in this world that I'm confident of, it's that Stephen King could not write a good book if he had to save his life. And he's like, have you read The Green Mile? I'm like, no. He goes, read that. You'll like it. I'm like, fine. I got a credit on audiobook. I'll do it. And the next time I saw him, I was like, I hate you. There was one thing I was confident about, is that Stephen King was a complete hack.
Oh, really?
And I love that book. I'm like, oh, now I can't say it. I'm questioning everything now.
Yeah.
And on that note, you bring up a good point for authors out there in reviews, because we were talking about reviews a little bit when we started this. And I was thinking about, David, when you brought up Shakespeare, right? There are people who really loathe Shakespeare.
I
right?
blame English teachers.
And well, yeah,
Yeah.
blame them for a lot more than that. And there are people who hate, Stephen King and whatever. There are people who hate Tolkien,
Everything.
right? No idea how that happens, but there it is. So your audience is there. You just got to find them, right? It's not going to be everybody.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's honestly one of the things that I enjoy the most about working in indie writing, indie authors, is for a while there, I was pretty big into chess. I mean, I still love chess, but I've got my chess clock right over there. There it is. But yeah, big chess fan, and I used to play tournament chess. And the great thing about tournament chess was no matter how terrible you were or how great you were, the professionals and the amateurs were all playing in the same tournament. And if you did really well, you could theoretically end up playing a professional, a world, former world champion. You'd be across the table from them. Now that doesn't really happen, but it is theoretically possible.
Right.
And I think that's the great thing about being an indie author is when someone reads my book and then someone reads, I don't know, Scott Lynch's Gentlemen Bastards or Robin Hobb's Farseer trilogy, Tolkien, I mean, you name it, Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea series, they're not, for the most part, the average reader is not judging me as an indie author. They are judging me alongside all the other books they've read. And to have someone not like your book, you're like, okay, that's fine. There's a lot of books out there. But if someone loves your book, they're loving your book the same way they love any author's book, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah.
And I think what you said there, though, if I can just tweak it a bit, I don't think when they're reading the books, they're comparing you to anybody.
That's true too.
They're just saying, what is your story? And do I really like the story? And if they do, then the comparisons come in their head, right? Then they go, it's like, I like this as much as I like X, Y, or Z. But I think that's nice too, right? So you're not put up against that right away when someone opens your book. You don't have that kind of hanging over you. They're going to judge it based on its own merit, not what your name is or who you are or anything. Maybe the cover, right? But nothing else. Let's hope.
Yeah. Well, and I would agree with that. I actually think that when I have friends or family that read my books, the biggest compliment is when they forget that it was someone they knew that was writing the book, or reading the book, or that they'd written it. And so it's like, oh yeah, I was reading it, but I kind of forgot that it was your book. I was just in the story. And that's actually high praise because I've had friends give me stuff of theirs to read. And when the book's not going well, I'm acutely aware that it is my friend that wrote it. But if I'm just enjoying the book, I forget the author and I'm just in the story. And I think that there's something really, really beautiful about that. But I would agree, the comparisons come probably afterward, which, and just to tell you, Mike, I was like a baby duckling imprinted on Stephen King at a very young age. So when I was like in junior high, I read so much Stephen King. I will say this, rereading some of his stuff, it doesn't all stand up as well as I'd hoped it would. Even something like 11/22/63, which today is 11/22. So shout out to that book. But that book, and I'll rant real quickly about it, that book has one of the most idiotic endings of any time travel book I've ever read. Because the whole premise of time travel as a genre is about unintended consequences. And this guy is trying to prevent the Kennedy assassination because he believes that if he does, the world will become a better place. But as a reader, we know that there are unintended consequences.
Right.
And I feel like as a reader, I'm just sitting there shaking my head the whole time going, I know the ending that's coming. I know the ending. And then the ending that I was anticipating was there. And I was like, yep, Like, you could have surprised me. You could have done something different, but you did exactly what I thought you were going to do. And why? Now, once again, Stephen King has sold millions more copies than I have.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, you had an opportunity there, and you went for the most obvious of endings.
If I had the choice of being called a hack but make millions, I think I would go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I'd even live in Maine. That'd be all right.
Yeah, it'd be fine. But once again, like Green Mile, amazing. His short stories, The Body, all that stuff, amazing. And I think that some of his earlier horror works, I really like, even though it's confusing as hell, I really like the Gunslinger series. But it is weird. I mean, it is weird on a whole other level.
So that's the book I read. I read the first book in the Gunslinger. Hated it.
It's bizarre. Yeah.
That's when I was like, okay, I've read one. I can now comment on the man's entire, catalog is terrible because I did not like this one book. So, now I've read two, and he's batting 500, which would put him in, the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and I will say one thing about Stephen King, which I think more writers could probably learn from, is his books, you are not guaranteed a happy ending. Some of his books are brutal, absolutely brutal. And I think sometimes as authors, we are a little too precious with our characters, and we're a little too protective of our happy endings. Stephen King, I feel like, has come from a school that says, you know what, this book may not end well, and we're just all going to have to buckle up.
It may not end happy.
No.
It can still end well.
True. And sometimes it ends happy and not well, or vice versa.
Right. As long as it's a good ending. And I mentioned it here, I think, a few weeks ago. The Power. Have you read that?
Mm-mm.
It's on Netflix now. I haven't watched it all. But it's just one of those things where you're reading along, and it's a good story, and you're kind of going, oh, wait, man, this is actually pretty good. But then you get to a point and you're like, oh, tell me they're not going to do what I think they're going to do when this ends, because they're writing themselves into a corner, and I think they don't know how to get out of it. And you can kind of see the train crash coming.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, that's how it ended. It's like, that was like the weakest way they could have. They just gave up about 80% of the way through. They went, oh shit, I don't know what to do. We're going to do this,
Yeah.
And it was super disappointing for what was a very good story.
Did you read the Hunger Games, that trilogy?
Yeah.
I did.
I contend that the woman had a cruise she had to be on, and so she just had to finish that third book as quickly as possible because it was dreadful. Love the first two. The third one was awful.
Well,
Have you read
that
George
I think
R. R.
is an
Martin's last book yet?
The what?
Have you read George R. R. Martin's last book yet?
I have not. I'm way
Nobody
behind.
has.
on
He hasn't
George R.
finished it yet.
Oh, I mean, but of the ones he's written, I've read the first two books in the Song of Ice and Fire, and they are exquisite and wonderful. But yeah, I mean, I think the woman who wrote Hunger Games, that third book is brutal, and in a way that I feel like was more about shock value than like, to me, and we can all differ on this, but to me, like a good ending is both surprising and inevitable. And I think the thing about Hunger Games was it was surprising, but nothing about it had that sense of like, well, of course this was the way it was supposed to go. I was like, wow, this really took a left turn. And yeah, I don't know what to think about that. What
got me upset is the one guy's character. I can't remember. I'm going to call him Fenris. I know that's wrong because I know that's Norse. But they, she talked all about him. And it's like, oh, there he is in the distance. Oh, look, he died. Next. And I'm like, you spent so much time building this character up. It's like, oh, yeah, he's dead. Climb the ladder now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Just story-wise, I'll never forgive her for that.
Yeah.
I don't think she'll mind.
No, she's fine. But I do think that there was a brutality to it that, as an author, it's like, okay, yeah, it's your story, do what you want. But it felt like we were kind of cheating the audience. I mean, there's shock value, and then there's just body count, which I felt like was kind of what was going on there. It's like, we don't have to kill off all the characters here. I mean,
I don't think she wanted to write another book. So
There it is. Yeah, make sure there's no sequels.
yeah, we're cutting this one off. But I mean, also I'm waving around Shakespeare. Shakespeare, of course, he was killing off main characters well before George R. R. Martin was doing it. So
Yeah, he was writing a nonfiction though. So in the interest of an ending that is a bit of a surprise and a bit of a left turn from where we were and may seem inevitable, what are you doing for Thanksgiving, David?
oh, great
Which is
question.
tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, I have my family that was in Huntington Beach has moved closer to me, and they are about 30 minutes away. So we are going to wake up. We're going to watch the Macy's Day Parade because I don't know why, but there is something about the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade that I am just. It is my like comfort viewing. I just put it on. We'll have breakfast. We'll watch the parade.
How old are
And
you?
the what?
How old are you?
I'm 36. Oh, wait, not 30, 46. There we go. I'm getting senile. No, 46.
Okay. You that if you were my and Mike's age, I would have had a theory for that. And the theory was that when we were young, the Macy's Day Parade was in black and white.
Oh, there you go.
And then one day, Dad came home with a brand new piece of 200-pound furniture that was a color TV. And the Macy's Parade took on a whole new kind of experience in color. But you probably had color the whole time, so never mind.
I did have color the whole time, but also the programming, there were like 5, 6, 7 channels. There were the main channels, and then there were the ones farther back on the dial, on the secondary dial.
UHF.
Yeah, oh, yes. And a lot of those, were reruns of black and white sitcoms and shows. I think for Macy's Day, the programming was so limited when I was younger that was kind of a television event that was like, okay, Macy's Day Parade. I also think that I've tried to get into watching the awards shows. The awards shows, some of them are great, some of them are horrible. You never know what you're going to get. The Macy's Day Parade, the beautiful thing about it is the same every year. The quality is unchanging. Like when I wake up tomorrow and I watch it, it will be just as great as it was last year and no better, no worse.
Yeah.
It is the same. So anyway, we'll watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. We'll go over to my parents' house. We'll probably watch some football. I'm a long-suffering Cowboys fan, being from Dallas, Texas, and so we'll watch the game.
You got a better guess, better, Mike.
Yeah, but you know what? I fully admit that my task in life is to suffer. Like that's really why I'm here as a Cowboys fan, and to pine after the 90s. But yeah, and then we'll have some. We'll have the big Thanksgiving meal. My dad is very proud of his pumpkin pie. So we will eat way too much pumpkin pie, and he will very proudly talk about this secret recipe of his, which I'm sure it's just from the back of the box, but but the secret recipe of his pumpkin pie. And then we will go home, load it up on the tryptophan and way too many beers, and we'll call it a night. So that's me. How about you guys?
That sounds perfect, really.
I love the holiday. It's a very simple holiday, and I don't have to buy gifts for anyone.
Nice.
Love it. It's just eat food, watch football, and call it a day.
Now, we don't have terrestrial TV. So there's no football, and the Patriots are 2-8, so there's really no football.
You've had your run.
Exactly. No, I'm not complaining. There was a guy in ESPN years ago wrote that when your team wins a championship, you can't complain for 5 years.
Oh, okay.
And it's cumulative, right? So I won't complain about the Patriots until 2032. I have that much time in the bank to sit back and go, we got 6, we're good.
Yeah.
Right. No, we're I don't even think we have a turkey in the house. I think we have like Cornish game hens or something. right?
They're like
So
little though, aren't they?
they are, but there's only like 3 of us here.
Oh, well,
So
that works.
there's it's going to be very scaled back, so much more relaxed, kind of not a lot of dishes to do, some just food lying around on plates that you can sit there. And my daughter and I will do what we've taken to doing the last couple of years. There is a station on the streaming services called Tubi, Tubi, that plays some of the worst Christmas movies ever. I mean, just horrible, horrible films. So we find the worst one that we can find, and we watch it in kind of Mystery Science Theater 3000, that thing.
No, that sounds fun.
It is a good time, but it's painful to watch some of these. It just hurts. But yeah, there you go. Mike?
Okay, well,
baby.
I'm a bachelor, so I went to Subway today and I bought my turkey sub.
Well done.
And I am leaving probably like 3 or so in the afternoon to drive to Harrisonburg, Virginia, because Ro and I will be there tomorrow at the Black Friday to sell our books in the hallway of the mall. So I'm getting a hotel, probably as cheap as I can, probably days in, like for $50, to spend my Thanksgiving in a hotel room by myself, which is not much different from me spending the day by myself here at my house. So I will have a turkey sub, though, because, it is Thanksgiving. So I have checked off all the boxes.
Very nice. And you said that there's going to be a Black Friday event. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's the Valley View Mall up in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I've been the last couple of years, and it's really extraordinary in that it's busy. Yeah. Most malls you go into now are just empty.
Tombs.
But this place has really good walk for 13 hours. Really good walkthrough. So it's a good event, and the lady who puts it on is a real sweet lady and treats us all very well. So can't miss.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I think I've got like a whole stack of unsold books from when I went to World Fantasy Con. Maybe I need to like load up my car and find one of these events in Virginia.
There are loads of events in Virginia and North Carolina. You just really kind of have to search it out. Huh?
Some of them are even good.
Yeah, there's that. There's that. This year has been a bit odd, but anyway. David, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you very much for joining us. Mike, do you have anything else?
I do not.
All right. So like and subscribe. Go to chirp.com and you can download
Books.
Chirp Books. Sorry, Chirp.
Chirp Books,
and you can get the 19.5-hour audio version of the Dryad's Crown for $1.99.
Which is 9 books in one.
Yeah.
You can't beat that. Give yourself a little present early, and you can sit down with a piece of pie on your stomach and just listen to that as you drift off quietly into sleep.
I think that would be a great way to spend a day.
I think it will. We'll give it a try. We'll find out.
All right. There we go. Well, I
right.
got my drink. Got my book. Good.
Okay.
Thank you guys for inviting me.
Oh,
David,
thanks for hanging out with us.
And I guess this is goodbye. Goodbye,
All right.
everyone.